Fergus Hodgson here, publisher and host of the monthly show. I'm glad we have an episode in English this month, and I am just so pleased to be speaking with you about what is going on in Argentina. We had a live stream with two of my good friends there, and now we can, I guess, assess the initial developments of this new era or regime. And I have with me a guest, and I think we interviewed him a year or two back, but in a different context. His name is Martín Litwak, and he's an international tax and wealth structuring expert, originally from Argentina, but he's also qualified to work in the British Virgin Islands, England, and Wales, and he spends a lot of his time here in the United States these days. You can follow him on Twitter. He has about 100,000 followers, just at martinlitwak.com. And we'll have the link to that in case you get confused by the spelling. Litwak is his last name, and also martinlitwak.com for his website. Martin, please give me your, I guess, initial reaction to Milei getting elected. Was this a shock to you?
It would have been a shock, probably a year earlier.
Okay.
I think that after the first elections to determine the candidate of the different coalitions, it was a really important contestant to the presidency. And as time went by, I mean, the past government was really a bad one, and it would have been impossible for them to keep power.
Fernandez, not Macri.
Yeah, exactly. Fernandez. Alberto Fernandez was really a really bad president. I would say an absent president. And his Minister of Economy was the candidate. So with the inflation Argentina had at the time, having a Minister of Economy running for presidency was really, it would have been a surprise for him to win, actually.
Counterintuitive to say the least. Yeah.
Exactly. So I think that it was not a surprise at the end of the day that Milei won. Actually, my own prediction was that he would win either in the first round or in the ballotage. But it was something I had to anticipate to my clients. For planning purposes, we have to try to think ahead of facts. And I think it was a really good thing for the country at the end of the day. I mean, I think there was between him and Massa, there was no option really. I mean, nobody. I mean, the people who voted for Massa was essentially, public employees, people who receive money from government. So
yeah.
So that was it, and I think
there are a lot of them. That's the problem. Yeah.
Well, that's why Massa got 44% of the votes. He should have received 20.
Sure.
But again, I think I think it was a really good good news for Argentina that the libertarian president won the elections. We'll see how it goes. But even if he doesn't do a great government, I think from a cultural battle point of view, it's good to have somebody with his background in the presidency. So again, most of the people are happy. Of course, Argentina is still going through a lot of pain, and will continue to be the case. I mean, we are anticipating, the government's anticipating 100% of inflation in the first 3 months of the year. Well, actually in December, January, and February. So by March, people in the people that are not rich will be suffering a lot to pay, private schools, private medicine, and things like that. So it's going to be complicated for him probably in March, April, if changes don't generate an immediate effect.
Yeah.
Again, I think it's what Argentina needs to do. I mean, Argentina cannot live, printing money, having new debt.
It's been going so well. It's been going so well for so long.
Yeah, it's I think the main problem with Argentina, quite frankly, is that Argentina, when it started to fall, was a really very rich country. So it took probably 70, 80 years for people to understand that we are in deep trouble and that we need a huge change, an 180-degree change.
Yeah. And there's so much to say about that, and I appreciate your perspective. I'm so glad we have you on, Martin. So, in some ways, if right now in Canada we have a very interventionist, centralized government over a vast country like Argentina is a vast country. People don't realize it often that it's a very, in many ways, sparsely populated country. Now, and if you did what is going on in Canada for 70 years, you're going to have some problems. So now, one question where someone with your insight would be helpful is the role of the Kirchneristas or the Kirchner wing. She was president, got ousted, then came back as vice president. Was it a case of her basically pulling the strings and Alberto Fernandez just being a placeholder?
Well, absolutely, absolutely. I think that was her plan. Um, Obviously, she would have hoped for a different outcome in terms of the results of the Argentinian government, but she
Yes.
was in a really great position because Alberto is the one to blame, and
She
at the end of
she
the
doesn't
day,
take so much of the hit. Yeah, she's just
no, and actually, I was talking the other couple of days ago with people from her party, and they're of
yeah,
course there's of course thinking about the next election already, and what they're saying is, listen, if the
yeah.
country is still crapping for years, our main strategy for the campaign would be to say, listen, the last 12 years, Argentina had 8 years of neoliberalism governments, Macri and Milei, and 4 years we have one of ours, but he was not the best candidate, so they will talk very poorly about Alberto Fernandez anyway, and they will say that was not real Kirchnerism. We need to go back to
Yeah, yeah.
uh,
This
so
word, this word neoliberalism or neoliberalism,
yeah.
people throw this around so loosely. I
Oh,
cannot
absolutely, yeah.
believe it. Yeah. Because I remember I was in Argentina just a year ago, and there were all these people. This is back before the whole Milei thing happened, just basically camping out in the middle of Buenos Aires. They're having these long-term protests. It's a bit like an Occupy Wall Street, but in the middle of Buenos Aires. And they were yelling about neoliberalism. And I was thinking, what planet do you live on? This country is the most overtaxed, overregulated country on the planet. And yet it's like this very specious or very enigmatic term that you can just throw at anything, right? It's very ill-defined.
Yeah, we never got anybody to actually come up with a good definition for it.
Yes.
Um, Even the socialists and communists that we have in Argentina, they cannot really define. It's like a slogan. It's like,
It's
uh,
just it's just it's just a pejorative thrown at people. Yeah.
yeah, yeah. And again, I mean, the main problem for Argentina is what you just mentioned. I mean, we have over 170 taxes. We have examples of double, triple, and
Yes.
quadruple taxation. Um, in addition to that, because there is a
Yeah,
lot of informal economy, the
that's
real
right.
effort that people that pay taxes make is even bigger. So it's really a country where if you pay the taxes, you go bankrupt.
Forget it. Yeah.
So
That's
that
what one
is
of my
that is
friends said. Yeah.
yeah, yeah. If you pay all the taxes, you go bankrupt. That's it. Actually, it's the only country in the world where, I mean, in each country, you have the government as a minority partner of your ventures. I mean, if I make $100 in Miami, I have to pay $37 probably to the government. So it's a
Yeah.
minority shareholder. In Argentina, if a company has, let's say, a profit of $206, and that's the number to make an easy math. If you have $206 of profit, you get 100, and the government get 106. So the government is the majority partner of your business, and that's the only
Yeah.
country where it happens. So it's and this is actually the only point where I'm not extremely happy with the government. I think Milei has sent a huge piece of legislation to the parliament. It has more than
Yes.
600 articles, and he also passed a decree. Both of them unregulate a lot of industries, and that is brilliant.
Deregulate.
At the same time, he's not he's not reducing taxes. I think, he's afraid that he's not going to um,
Get it
uh,
passed?
yeah, no, I think he's afraid that if he reduces taxes, he will get a lower resources to the government, which actually by by all standard, Argentina is a tax hell, and if you reduce taxes, you will get more money. It's a classic Laffer
It's Laffer Curve scenario.
yeah.
Yeah.
So, and I think this is the only issue that I know Javier is pro Laffer. We discussed it many times, and I don't know why he's not doing this now. And that's my only concern. If there are pressures internal in the government, I don't know. But for some reason, he's not doing something that he believes in, and that's my only, let's say, not red light, let's say yellow light.
Okay.
All the
Red
rest
flag.
is really great what he's doing.
Yeah. So actually, so let's get into it because there's a big problem that even if you or I were to get elected to some presidency, that doesn't mean we can just suddenly turn it into a classical liberal free market paradise, right? It's not that simple. Even if we might want to, I would turn the United States into a tax haven, right?
Absolutely. Absolutely.
But then you've got these other people who will resist,
Yeah.
and if you, like you said, if you've got 40 something percent of people who are feeding at the trough and they're psycho, they're violent, they will resist aggressively. So that's why I was pleasantly surprised that Milei prevailed, but I just have this suspicion always that you can't put too much weight on one man to fix an entire country. It's
No,
just too
no.
much.
Well, a couple of things about that.
Yes.
First of all, he has now the honeymoon with the voters, and the good thing is that in Argentina, January and February are vacation. It's like July and August here, so nobody is really paying too much attention. So
Okay.
whatever he needs to do it now. By
Yes.
March, he needs to have already deregulated most of the things he wants to deregulate. That's one thing. Now, on the other hand, two more comments. For me, the presidency of Milei is some sort of a situation, a binary situation. Is glory or total failure. There is no
Yeah.
middle term here. In Argentina, we say es la gloria o devoto. Devoto being one of the jails there in Argentina. So it's like he cannot do
Yeah.
a so-so government. He needs to fight and die for what he believes.
Yeah.
Um, and the other thing is, in most of countries, a populist government or a messianic government won't work. And as liberal, liberal in the Latin American sense of the world, not
Classical
the
liberal.
US.
Yes, liberal. Yeah.
So I would always be against any populist government. But in Argentina, um, we generally believe in messianic leaders.
I
Historically, that's
know.
been the case.
Terrible. Yeah.
That is terrible. But at the same time, again, we are not, World Cup champions because we have a good team. We have Messi or we have Maradona. And in politics,
So
we have
true.
Menem.
So true. Yeah.
So we had Menem, and then we had Roca, and we had Perón. For good or for worse, I mean, we are we do elect people with that profile. So I think it might work a little bit better than in other countries. Of course, there is a big risk that he will, if he succeeds,
Fail.
accumulate a lot of power, and if he fails, everything that he wishes for will not be finally achieved. So it's a complicated situation. I think again, I think he had 2 more months to do really whatever he wants. In March, April, with people back from vacations, with 100% already of inflation in the previous 3 months, maybe that 44% of people who were against him will be 54 or 60. So, people who are
Yeah.
not being able to pay for food or for medicine or for education, it will be very difficult to support the government ideologically if you cannot pay for the things you need.
Yes.
So again, the next 2 or 3 months are really key, and I think he will either be successful and he will concentrate more power and he will be able to do all the reforms, or the left will be on the street, making protests aggressively, as you mentioned before, and he end up before his term, basically.
Yeah. So, okay. There's a lot going on. So, do you want to comment on the quality or lack thereof of his cabinet or his team, the people who are working around him?
I think that was better than we expected.
Okay.
Um, um, is of course a better cabinet than and a smaller cabinet than the last two presidencies, Macri and Fernandez. So I don't think that is the problem. I think the problem for him will be the parliament, where he's a minority, differently from what happened, for example, here in the US. It is, not necessarily who wins the election has majority of the parliament. Here is very unusual, that situation, at least in the initial 2 years of government. But he is in minority. I mean, fortunately, what appears to be happening is that the coalition that Macri headed is supporting in the parliament the project. So that might put him on a simple majority at least, which is good. And the other thing is the street. I mean, people in the street. How the left reacted in Colombia, in Chile, in
Ecuador,
Ecuador,
yeah.
when they want to Bolivia, when they want to remove a government. So I think we need to support Milei, even if he makes mistakes, and we need to support him actively. And people in Argentina will need to go to the street to support when some people are starting to complain, because otherwise it's going to be very difficult.
That's my concern, that these people who have grown in just an enormous entitlement mentality, as I said, they throw a tantrum. They'll go and burn tires on the roads. They'll start smashing things.
Yeah.
They behave like children.
Well, they have nothing to lose, really. So at least at the moment, historically in Argentina, there were no consequences of aggressive protesting. Now we have a Minister of Security, which is Patricia Bullrich, who was actually the candidate for presidency for Macri's coalition, and she's strong. She's a strong woman. She knows the police and the other forces, and that's some sort of reassurance when you have people in the street protesting. So again, so far so good. The problem again is the middle class. If the middle class decides to stay at home or even to protest because they cannot pay some things, it will be very, very, very complicated. If the middle class stays with the government and their position is against the people protesting, then it's going to be okay for Milei.
Okay. Now, many of us, I mean, look, the inflation is one of the big issues that we're all familiar with. And I put out on Twitter that when I went to Argentina in 2016, the black market rate was 15 pesos to the dollar. So fast forward 8 years, and it is over 1,000. So from 15 pesos per dollar to over 1,000 per dollar, that gives people a sense. I mean, and we've had high inflation here. We've all been complaining about inflation here. Okay. We're all going, this guy, he can do it. He can be like Ecuador or Panama, and he can dollarize Argentina. Is this actually going to happen?
It might. It might. Rumors are that the US doesn't want to cooperate with that.
What?
Yeah, I don't know. Rumors.
Okay.
But yeah, I think, the problem, well, not the problem. The situation, I mean, Argentinians love dollars. I think that Argentina is the country with the most US dollars than any other bills than any other country
Just
in the
per
world.
cap, just held
Yeah.
in physical possession.
Yeah, physical possession, exactly. Only second to the US, actually. So I think that might be a case. I think that, but what the government has said is that they need to stabilize the economy first. And actually, that's not that's not wrong. I mean, I had a discussion with the president of the central bank in Ecuador, that dollarized Ecuador. That was there when the president dollarized Ecuador. He lives in Miami. Actually, I had a few meetings with him in the past 6 months. And
Yes.
what he said to me was, listen, the dollarization in Ecuador um, was never, it never ended because, we were supposed to, of course, dollarize the monetary, let's say the monetary aspect of the dollarization took place because, the local currency was replaced by the dollar. But
Yeah.
after that, they were supposed to open up all the markets so that more dollars can enter into the market. And without that, he doesn't consider that the dollarization is complete. He thinks that it's a process that is still very much going on. And the reason why that's the case is because Correa went to power a few years ago. So I think that what Milei is doing, if he's doing that, because we don't know, but if he is trying to first sort out the main problems of Argentina and then dollarize, it sounds like a better plan than dollarize all of a sudden, but still have restrictions to send money to other countries and high taxes so that you cannot compete and very old labor laws. So you need to modernize and deregulate and then dollarize. So I think it might be the case.
Yes, that's an interesting way you've couched the argument that it's not just that we declare that dollars are our currency. There's a lot more to it than that. That capital controls are a problem. They're an impediment to actually using dollars. And then, of course, there's actually voluntary uptake. So in many ways, Argentina has already dollarized informally.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Yeah, you have. I mean, if you want to buy a house, nobody publicizes the price of a house in pesos.
Right.
That's happened, and
I mean, it would be through the roof. I do just wait a couple of days, and the exchange rate has changed. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, the dollar and dollar probably continue to rise. I mean, I mean, people say in Argentina the dollar is like a stock that always goes up. So
Well,
there's
versus the peso, sure.
no,
Yeah.
no, no, yeah, versus the peso. I mean, the point is you never. I was saying that the dollar is never expensive. The dollar is always cheap in Argentina because it will go up. That's for sure. It might
Right.
go up
Right.
sooner or later, quicker or faster or slower, but it goes up.
Yes. Well.
I remember the last time that the dollar had the same nominal value in Uruguay and Argentina was in 2016, actually. In 2016, the dollar in Argentina, probably after your trip, reached 40 pesos at one point.
Oh.
And Uruguay was also 40 pesos. That was 2016. So we are now 8 years after that. Uruguay is still 40 pesos and Argentina is 1,100. So it's
Well.
crazy.
I just remember it very clearly because I got on this was the start of 2016. In 2016, there were all sorts of problems at that time too. So it might have gotten up to 40. I can't remember. But when I got on the ferry from Buenos Aires to Montevideo, they could give the informal rate because they were no longer in Argentine jurisdiction. They could just trade whatever they wanted to.
Exactly.
And suddenly all the kind of like the official rate that was just kind of forgotten. And it was 15.5 or something like that. They were paying for dollars. Now, okay, you're a tax man and wealth structuring specialist. What does this all mean? You said something like 130 taxes. Are we going to cut them down to, I don't know, 120?
Well, the funny thing is, we have 170, not 130. So
Okay.
But from those 170 taxes, there are 10 taxes or 11 that generate more than 92% of the revenues of the government.
Okay.
So actually, you have to get rid of 160 and just leave 10 or 11. The problem with Argentina is that everything you do is taxable. So you earn money, you pay taxes, which is fine. Everybody does that in any place in the world. But then if you spend money, you pay taxes, which again, that's the normal way. Most countries, even the successful one, will charge taxes on the gains, the income, and the expenses. But then in Argentina, if you keep the money, you also pay a tax, which is a wealth tax. And if you make an investment, you pay transactional tax. Like, let's say every single, this is crazy to understand from an American, but every single dollar that gets into your account pays the debit and credit tax, which is 0.6. And of course, it's nothing, it's 0.6. But
that's serious.
you never get a full dollar in your account. It's crazy. Then you have a whole bunch of presumption that if you have a second house.
So just transaction costs, just transaction tax, just moving money around, you're being taxed.
The point is, successful countries never charge transactions or wealth, because those taxes do not incentivize saving, investing, and therefore growing. And our taxes are designed for the rich to pay, but the effect of those taxes is that poor people get poorer, basically, because the rich people generally don't care about whether the country grows or not, because they have their money already. Now, the poor people, if the country goes down, are the most affected. So all those taxes are really bad for the poor people, for the employees, and for people who cannot transfer that tax.
People who have any who have any aspiration of moving up in the world, they're the ones who are really hurt. And just, I've said this before on the show, I did live in Argentina for a year, and we were having all these debates, like I said, about this neoliberalismo, and I just thought, the world has passed you by. Are we going to sit here and discuss, these 100 and something taxes, or seek to be competitive? Because the further you fall behind, the more you kind of go into your shell, and you're almost afraid to compete because you can't. You become so unproductive. And it's just, like I said, Argentina to me is a case study of the post-first world nation, right? The nation that was first world and that is no longer, unfortunately.
Well, it's probably the only example
that I know of. Yeah.
Well,
but you got to really work hard to get poor after being rich. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I think the other example, the three examples I can think of, and this is worldwide probably. I don't know if I might be missing a country in Africa or Asia, but Argentina, Venezuela, and Cuba.
Okay. Yeah. Sure.
Cuba in 1959 was the first economy in Latin America. First traffic light, the first cars, the first televisions
per capita.
People who left, and this is I heard the story many times. People who left Cuba to move to Argentina at that time because of the revolution, they arrive in Argentina and say, "Hey, what happened here? I mean, we had a much better lifestyle in Cuba." So it's crazy, but it seems that at one point, and you mentioned Canada before, it's not at one point when things go really well, there is this trend to distribute, and this is where the problem starts, when you start distributing wealth, and people who doesn't work get something that they don't deserve at the end of the day.
Right. Okay. So the taxes, you're not sure. You say you ideally just hold on to the 10 or so and get rid of the rest because of all the compliance costs, basically, because people forget that, yes, taxes bring in revenue, but they also place a compliance burden. And Absolutely. This is a drag on any kind of innovation, whatever. So if you could just wipe the board and cut down to the 10, that would be incredibly
and again, the point is,
relieving.
When a country does well, you see a lot of people making money and spending money. Just tax those things. You don't need more taxes.
Yes, but tell us, is Milei actually going to do this? What's going on? Is this going to happen?
Hopefully, the problem with Argentina, the problem with Argentina is actually bigger than that. And I don't know if you know about this, but we are a federal country. We have 20 something provinces, like states. But the US or Spain or Switzerland are countries that are federal from a government, but also they operate as real federal countries. So, one state can have an income tax, another state can compete with that and have a better taxation or worse taxation. You see what happens. The tax burden of somebody who lives in California is not the same as somebody who lives in Miami. And that's now Argentina doesn't do that. Argentina is a federal country, but the central government is the one that actually creates and get paid for the taxes in the vast majority of the taxes. So what happens is that there is a law that is called the co-participation law, where they receive the money, central government receive the money, and then they distribute the money among the states, let's say, which creates a lot of problems because you have, for example, provinces in the north that don't generate any revenue, that have 60% of public servants, and they basically, what we say is that the VAT of the poor people outside the city of Buenos Aires pays for, very good salaries of public servants in Santiago del Estero in the north.
Yeah.
So they need to get rid of that law and allow provinces to compete. And that needs a constitutional reform. So even if Milei reduces the taxes, they are still going to get the taxes paid at the federal level. And then also the federal government uses that politically. They send more money to
of course. They'll play games.
So that's the main problem. You need to, the same way you need to take out the politics from printing money and from the monetary policies, you need to take out the government from taxation. So you need to have a system where provinces compete and the central government is not able to interfere.
Yes, but so does this constitutional element, does this date back to the Peron era?
No, actually, that's something that was included by Menem in the reform
90s.
before in 94.
Oh wow!
The first co-participation law was a few years before Peron got elected. Peron didn't have a lot of problem with taxation. At that time the taxes were actually worldwide were really low. So there was no problem. There was a new inhabitants moving to Argentina because of the war. So taxation was never a problem during the Peronist, during the Peron era, let's say. And Menem was the one who elevated this co-participation law into constitutional hierarchy, basically. So now it's complicated.
I want you to give us some predictions, though. I feel like you're telling us, and I agree with you, all these ideas, and in many ways, you're revealing what I suspected, that there are so many layers that it's very tough for one man to get in there and just kind of move it along easily. Like you said, especially if there's a constitutional impediment to local taxation collection.
Yeah. I think that what might happen, if we want to be optimistic,
yes,
what needs to happen is that with the great, opening to the world and the regulation and stuff like that, Argentina would be so successful that even having a huge tax burden will not jeopardize the revenues of the country and the growth. So Argentina needs to grow despite the really toxic tax system it has. Actually, it's not the system. I always say we don't have a tax system, we have a tax regime. Nobody thought about having a logical system of tax collection and stuff like that. There are people.
It's just a war. It's a war, basically. Yeah.
I think again, if people start realizing that the country is going well, maybe he will have the political power to do a constitutional, amendment and at least simplify the tax system. If not improve, at least simplify. Which again, from a compliance perspective, as you said before, from the cost perspective, is going to be something positive. I think the point, and I discussed this with some people from the government, is they are convinced that they need to first deregulate the economy and reduce the expenditures of the government, and then have a proper tax discussion. I don't agree with that, but I respect the position, of course. There's nothing I could do about it. I only hope that when the time arrives for tax discussion, they do a really in-depth review of the whole regime.
Right. Yeah, in some ways you might say it's fiscally responsible to do that, to liberalize the economy and to have some austerity with spending without cutting taxes. But like you said, if you believe in the Laffer curve, right? It's basically a tautology that if you tax people 100%, then they'll do nothing, right?
No, I mean, and actually, there's a very good explanation for even if you forget about the Laffer curve, you know, if you open the economy, and let's say you let the Argentinian textile industry to compete with China and India and Malaysia, which is fine. They need to compete. That's okay. I'm all for that. But at the same time, you need to create labor laws and tax system that is similar to theirs. Otherwise, they would be competing.
You're fighting with one hand behind your back. Yeah.
Exactly. So that's the problem. I think we should, even if the Laffer Curve doesn't work, you need to do both things at the same time. You need to allow for people in Argentina to compete. If you don't reduce taxes and you don't flexibilize the labor laws, you are not allowing really them to compete. You are virtually forfeiting all your local industries.
Yeah. One final remark, and Martin, you've been very generous with your time. Thank you. Do you want to comment on the future of, let's say, the informal economy? Because, of course, this toxic tax regime and regulatory environment has created an enormous informal economy in Argentina. So you can go on, is it Libre Mercado? Basically, they have their own little Craigslist website, and you get almost everything at the tax-free or duty-free rate, you know? So if you want to buy a rowing machine or whatever it may be, people are smuggling these things in somehow. I don't know how they get them in, but they get them in there somehow. So
absolutely.
Yeah. So is this, I'm trying to think, will there be ideally some kind of transition to formalizing the economy where you can build more of a sophisticated business?
It's all about having the right incentives. A tax system is a system of incentives. If you have, let's say, an income tax of 20%, nobody will, risk their freedom and their money to smuggle things into the country. Now, if you have 40%, that's different. So I think that actually, I always say Argentina has a lot of fights to fight, but for me, the first one, the mother of all battles, is a tax fight. Even if you don't, because it might happen. Let's think for a second that the Laffer curves work, which I think it works, and there are many examples that throughout the history. But if you put together the right fiscal reform, tax reform, with all the tax cuts, all the good tax cuts, then you will actually raise the revenues. So you might not need to reduce the size of the government, which again, I'm all for reducing it. But if you have to pick one fight, the tax fight might sort out more problems than the reduction of the government fight.
Okay. We'll leave it there. I like that conclusion. Martin, well, we've been speaking with Martin Litwak, and he's on Twitter, at Martin Litwak, and martinlitwak.com is his website. Mate, it's a pleasure to meet you. Hope we catch up in person one of these days.
Absolutely. Thank you very much for your time, and let's do that.